So for question 12, it says the chairperson should not have released the election commission's report to the public. That sounds a lot like the conclusion. There's one other clue that's the conclusion. Anyone know what it is? 4. 4 is a premise indicator, which means it's going to point forward to a premise and back to a conclusion. So the chairperson should not have released the election report to the public. Got it. They shouldn't have released it. Why? Because the chairperson did not consult any other members of the commission about releasing the report before having it released. This is a very straightforward argument, right? There's one premise, there's one conclusion. You should not have released it because you didn't consult the other people. Boom. Did not consult, therefore do not release, or should not release. Sound good? What's the assumption here? This argument is flawed.
That not consulting means not release.
Yeah, that's all it is. If you don't consult, then you should not release, right? This is the assumption that I'm looking for. If that's assumed, then this conclusion would follow from this premise. Is anyone unclear about this? Is this all what we predicted? This is what we predicted.
Wait, sorry, what is the assumption?
If you don't consult with your fellow members, then you should not release it. Like if you assume that if-then statement, right? If that if-then statement is true, then you combine that with this premise that they did not consult, or this chairperson did not consult, that would force us to conclude that they should not release. Okay, answer choice A. It would have been permissible for the chairperson to release the report to the public only if most other members of the commission had first given their consent. So, okay, says only if means then. So this becomes if permissible to release, then they gave their consent, right? Yeah, so the contrapositive would be if you don't give your consent, or if most did not give their consent, then it's not permissible to release. You should not release. Now this is different from our prediction, but if the rule is that if most don't consent, then you should not release, then the fact that the person didn't consult would mean that most did not give their consent, and therefore it should not be released. So this is definitely a good answer. I would keep it open. Is anyone not clear why this is good? We're good with that. Okay. Answer choice B, all the members of the commission had signed the report prior to its release. Okay, great. Not sure how that has anything to do with anything. C, the chairperson would not have been justified in releasing the report if any members of the commission had serious reservations about the report's content. Why does this not end up justifying the conclusion? Anyone?
Consulting is not the same thing as having serious reservations.
That's right. Consulting, the chairperson consulting with the members has nothing to do with whether or not they have reservations, right? You might fail to consult with the members, but they might not have any reservations. They're like, yeah, oh, you didn't consult with me, but that's fine. Go ahead, right? All right, how many people were tempted by D? Okay. How many people were not tempted by D?
Oh, I was tempted by D.
You were tempted by D?
Yeah, I was
okay.
tempted by D.
Who is not tempted by D? All right, I'm just curious. Why is D wrong?
Pretty much the same reason that C's wrong.
The chairperson would have been justified in releasing the report only if each of the commission's members would have agreed to its being released had they been consulted. Wait, no, it's not the same reasoning as C. C is like reservations is totally disconnected from consulting, right?
Because we don't know whether or not they were consulted.
Well, we know that they were not consulted. Yeah?
So they don't need to have agreed, right?
Only if each of the members would have agreed to its being released. Did they agree? Did they agree to its being released?
Well, they had.
Have they been consulted?
Well, let's start with this first. Did they agree to its being released?
No, they weren't consulted.
They weren't consulted, so how could they have agreed to its being released, right? It's the same sort of thing that we're thinking about with A. So Guillaume, why is this wrong?
I mean, what triggered it for me was if each of the commission's members had been consulted, whereas up there it says any other, which makes it sound like it's not all.
Okay, actually no. So you're getting rid of it for the wrong reason. Because answer choice D says if each of the members would have agreed, right? Then it would have been justified only if each of them would have agreed. So as long as one of them doesn't agree, then it's not justified. So the each here is actually good for this answer. It basically says you've got to consult, or you've got to get every single one of them to agree. So as long as you can show that one of them did not agree, then it would not have been justified. All right, does anyone else have another reason why D is wrong? Yes.
Can I rephrase what I meant before?
Sure, go ahead.
Would have, so if they all would have agreed,
Okay, if they all would have agreed,
then it doesn't matter if they were consulted or not?
why?
Because you can imagine a scenario where they were consulted and they would have all agreed.
Yeah, so really what we have is we have two if-then statements here. It says, only if each of the commission's members would have agreed to its being released had they been consulted. Had is the same as if. So it's justified only if each of them agree if they had been consulted. And we're like, well, they weren't consulted, so what do we do in that situation? We don't know. This if-then statement doesn't apply. And so, in my mind, that word had they been consulted, is the real kicker here, because it's basically if they had been consulted. And we know that they had not been consulted. So, this if-then statement doesn't even get triggered. It's sort of like, well, if they had been consulted, then we'll tell you a bunch of stuff. But we don't know whether we know they hadn't been consulted, so it's like a situation that we've never dealt with. So that's what you meant.
I still think it's similar to C.
In that sense, it is similar. In other words, in C, we had an if clause that wasn't triggered, right? Serious reservations wasn't triggered.
Yeah, same clauses are triggered.
Yeah. So in that sense, it is the same. All right. Anyone tempted by E? Okay.